Hi, I'm Luna. Welcome back to Luna Ơi. I wanted to make a quick video because Vietnam has been in the news a lot lately, and I wanted to clarify and explain things a bit from a Vietnamese perspective. As I'm sure you know, on April 3rd, the USA dropped a bombshell, a new unilateral tariff on, well, basically the whole world. And Vietnam got hit with one of the highest rates. But Trump forgot about one thing. Vietnam is used to having bombshells dropped on us by the USA. And as the only country ever did shoot down a B-52 bomber, I think we will be okay. So let's break this down. As a Vietnamese economics grad, top 5 universities in Vietnam, by the way, I really wanted to speak on this issue. Western news is really only telling part of the story, so I will do my best to break things down and give you an idea of how Vietnam is dealing with this tense situation. First things first, Trump's claim that Vietnam slaps a 90% tariff on US goods. Total bullshit, zero evidence, it's just not true. Vietnam has never taxed US imports at 90%, not once. The actual number? According to the 2024 U.S. Trade Representative Report, Vietnam's average most favored nation tariff on the U.S. is just 9.4%, about 10% of what Trump administration claims to be. So yeah, 90% is pure fiction. And guess what? Trump never even explained his math. What kind of cloud formula did he use? Well, the Trump administration didn't explain their reasoning for the tariff figures behind the tariffs at all. So we can only infer based on circumstantial evidence. So let's try to figure it out. His so-called reciprocal tariff might have been calculated like this. Step 1, Vietnam's trade surplus with the US, $136 billion. Step 2, US trade gap with Vietnam, $13 billion. Step 3, divide 136 by 13, multiply by 100, and voila, that's your 90%. Yes, I really think that's how they calculated this, and it's very dishonest and ridiculous, but we're talking about Donald Trump here, right? As an economics student, I never seen such a laughable calculation, and here, the Trump administration is bragging about it.
Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46% tariff.
It's not just bad math. It's terrible diplomacy and, as the USA will soon learn, disastrous economic policy. So anyway, it seems like the Trump administration divided their fictional 90% figure approximately in half to arrive at the 46% tariff rate they are hitting Vietnam with. I suppose they think this will make them look reasonable and fair. After all, the US tariff is only half of the completely fictional and fabricated Vietnamese tariff that doesn't even exist in the real world.
But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us because we are being very kind. We're kind people, very kind.
At any rate, Vietnamese communists are now facing the most absurd and frankly terrifying trade war yet from the US fascists. But we were not surprised, we jumped right into action. Within 4 hours, Vietnam's National Assembly was in session. Before the meeting even ended, 200 top economic negotiators were en route to the US. We officially requested a 1 to 3 month delay, aiming for a 0% tariff deal. The reason we were able to spring into action is simple. We are incredibly organized, and we have backup plans in place for almost any scenario. This, by the way, is why we were able to so quickly and effectively deal with COVID-19. We had close to 0 deaths for the first year of the pandemic because Vietnam had been planning and preparing for a pandemic scenario going back to the SARS pandemic in 2002. This is no different. You can absolutely be sure that Vietnamese economists have been planning for just this scenario with the USA, at least in the first Trump term when his first administration used tariff heavily against nations like China. Months ago, Vietnam's government was already warning of a looming global trade war and ordering economists to prepare for every possible scenario. Our leader's message? We've survived 20 years of comprehensive sanctions from the USA. We will not back down now. Both our Prime Minister and the General Secretary of the Communist Party reassure us that Vietnam will find a way to continue to thrive in this coming global trade war, just as we did through the pandemic. During the pandemic, Vietnamese communists guided our economy into becoming one of the fastest growing economies in Asia. But as far as the USA goes, we do not trust them at all. This is something that I personally believe the West gets wrong about Vietnam. The Western press always likes to claim that Vietnam absolutely worships the USA and that we want to side with them against China. They use the fact that we have a comprehensive strategic partnership with the USA as evidence of this supposed fact. But we haven't had a comprehensive strategic partnership with China since 2008, much longer than we've had with the USA. The fact is, Vietnam will do its best to have a peaceful and productive relationships with every nation on earth. We want to be friends with everyone, but that doesn't mean we won't defend our people and our economy. For thousands of years, Vietnamese have always had the same philosophy. We hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. At this point, I can only speculate. But as of right now, I think the worst case scenario for Vietnam involves our huge wealth of natural rare earth resources. The US is actively trying to strong-arm Ukraine into paying debts with these minerals, despite Ukraine having very little rare earth. Meanwhile, Vietnam ranks number 2 in the world for having the most rare earth, with China as number 1. And as you know, China is now totally done with the USA. They have issued a huge tariffs against the USA in retaliation to Trump's trade war, and have even gone as far as to ban Chinese firms from investing in US companies. Bravo, China. Vietnam's got it all: natural resources, a young workforce, relatively inexpensive skilled labor, ports, and stable politics. That's why the world has been turning Vietnam as its new alternative to China. And that's why the USA, led by Donald Trump, the greedy capitalist, wants to lure us into the trap. For years, the US has demanded rare earth mining rights and military bases in Vietnam. They want our resources and a strategic foothold against China. Their goal? Flood us with expensive US goods, crush our domestic industries, and turn us into another Ukraine-style proxy. Of course, this makes us nervous. What kind of deal will Vietnam strike? How will it impact us? Right now, we are all waiting anxiously.
Hi, EJ here. Welcome back to Wait, what? This is Luna's channel. What am I doing here?
I've summoned you here to do my bidding.
Not again. All right, what's your bidding this time, Luna?
Tell everyone about your experience watching Vietnam develop over the last 12 years.
Fine. I moved to Vietnam in 2013. At that time, Vietnam was a completely different nation. I saw way more poverty, and Vietnam just felt like a developing country. You know, smartphones were very much a luxury that few people had. There were very few cars on the street. In fact, I have some footage from my first trip to Vietnam that shows the difference. And take a look. Here's Ho Chi Minh City in December 2012. Here's Ho Chi Minh City today. Vietnam has developed with breathtaking speed. When I first moved here, nobody knew anything about Vietnam. When I told my friends I was moving here, they were honestly shocked. Vietnam's reputation was kind of terrible, and everyone thought of it as just a poor country with very little hope for a successful future. That started to change by around 2015, 2016, when suddenly people started to notice that things they were buying, like shoes and jackets and home goods, were made in Vietnam. More people started coming here for vacation, seeing how beautiful it was, how good the food is, how nice the people are, and they were noticing that the material conditions here were improving just like I was. Then the pandemic happened. I think this was a turning point for how a lot of the world saw Vietnam. It was a miracle case. For the first year of the pandemic, there were only around 50 cases of COVID. The people here were honestly protected, and Vietnam prospered while the West spiraled into chaos. The difference was night and day. And if you would have told me in 2013 when I first moved here that within about a decade, Vietnam would become such a powerful and important economy that it gets name dropped in virtually every article about a global trade war, I would have laughed in your face. And yet here we are. Vietnam has had incredible success with the deck stacked against them the entire time. And despite this incredible success, the Western press has underestimated and maligned this nation and its people while distorting the truth about what's going on here every step of the way. So I expect to see much the same in the coming months and years. The West is going to get the story wrong about Vietnam, catastrophize and make things seem much worse than they are, and just lie about this country the way they've been doing the whole time I've lived here. They're already describing Vietnam as fragile and spelling doom for this country. The West just has a habit of underestimating Vietnam. But if you want to hear a counter perspective from a Vietnamese communist, be sure to subscribe to Luna and share her videos if you find them useful. You should also subscribe to Non-Compete.
Nope, you're not blogging non-compete on my channel. Blog the book.
All right. Luna translated this book. It's the Vietnamese curriculum on dialectical materialism. It's a fantastic resource if you want to understand Marxism and communist philosophy from a Vietnamese perspective. You can get the ebook for free at banyanhouse.org. I should also mention that I illustrated and edited the ebook.
Okay, that's enough from you now. Back to your void dimension.
Not the void dimension. No!
So, what does the future hold for Vietnam? Well, we are expecting 3 possible scenarios. Best case, a fair deal, no loss of resources and sovereignty, and Vietnamese officials manage to work out a fair trade deal with the USA. Economic relations are normalized, Vietnam keeps growing, the US gets quality goods, win-win. This is what Vietnam wants. We don't want a trade war where nobody benefits and everyone suffers. Bad scenario. The US demands resources like rare earth and military bases on Vietnamese soil, but Vietnam says no. The USA maintains its tariffs, perhaps even institute sanctions, but we've survived wars, and we will find a way through this crisis the same as every other nation. Worst case scenario, and I don't think this will happen. Vietnam surrenders to US demands, becoming a proxy against China like Ukraine. If this does happen, we are doomed. And this is why the USA will push very hard for this scenario. The USA has wanted to destroy Vietnam since the 1950s, and I believe we will continue to struggle and fight against this, and I believe we will win. Unfortunately, as EJ said, the capitalist media of the West will distort the situation and do everything they can to make Vietnam look weak. The fact that we are sending a team to negotiate with Trump will be interpreted as weak by the West. Anything and everything we do will get spun to make our communist government look as bad as possible. That's just the way things go when you're trying to build socialism in a hostile capitalist world. But that won't deter us, and from my perspective, I believe we will come out of this trade war stronger than we began. Luna here with a quick update. Right now in the Western media I've been reading, they've begun building the narrative that Vietnam is bowing down before the USA's demands. This, as I already mentioned above, is the tactic to make Vietnam look weak and to fool Western viewers into misunderstanding our diplomacy policies. What you have to understand is that the USA, by acting so irrationally and disrupting the entire world's global trade, is going to destroy its own economy and will do a lot of damage to the rest of the world simultaneously. And that includes Vietnam. Of course, Vietnam will try to minimize the harm done by Trump's reckless and senseless tariff policies. And of course, the government will try to work out a deal with the USA that stabilizes us as we transition into this rapidly developing new era of global trade war. But it would be a mistake to think that Vietnam is just going to roll over and do whatever the USA demands of us. In a National Assembly meeting on April 6, our Prime Minister affirmed that the US is our biggest export market, but by no means it is the only market. Vietnam needs to restructure our export industry and enhance our goods quality to enter many other very potential markets, such as the Middle East, Eastern Europe, Latin America, India, and ASEAN. To me, personally, it seems obvious that Vietnam is now trying to buy time to make a smoother transition towards strengthening ties to more trade partners. On the one hand, Vietnamese diplomats will try to build as soft a landing as possible as the USA pulls back relations. And on the other hand, we will continue building up our trade relations with other countries. Remember that the big reason Vietnam sells so much stuff to the USA is because Trump issued huge tariffs against China during his first term as president. American companies immediately began looking for an alternative to China to manufacture goods, and Vietnam proved to be a reliable and strong manufacturing hub. Then, during COVID, Vietnam was one of the only countries on earth that really managed to successfully contain the pandemic. And that made us very stable and powerful as an industrial center. We have a great reputation now all around the world as a place to make high-quality products at a good price, and you can be sure that Vietnam will leverage that with other countries. When Vietnam upgraded the USA to a comprehensive strategic partnership status under the Biden administration, a lot of people made a huge deal about it and said that Vietnam was allying with the USA against China. Of course, nobody mentioned that Vietnam has already had a comprehensive strategic partnership with China since 2008. And nobody has been reporting on the fact that since upgrading the USA to comprehensive strategic partner, Vietnam has since upgraded 5 more countries to comprehensive strategic partnership status. Number 1 is Australia in March 2024. Number 2 is France in October 2024. Number 3 is Malaysia in November 2024. Number 4 is New Zealand in February 2025 and Indonesia in March 2025. At the same time, Vietnam is strengthening its relationship with Spain, and Spain's Prime Minister is visiting Vietnam for the first time since 1977 today, while I'm recording this, on April 9, 2025. And we will also upgrade our relationship to comprehensive strategic partnership very soon. Vietnam has also been strengthening its already strong trading partnership with China, and Xi Jinping has announced that he will also visit Vietnam this month. So the USA is telling the truth in reporting that Vietnam is trying to negotiate a mutually beneficial deal with the USA, but they are not telling the whole truth. They are leaving out the fact that Vietnam has many other options aside from the USA, and we are pursuing them. In the end, it's a simple fact. Without the US, we still have the rest of the world to trade with. And it's also a fact that the US will lose more than us in the long run if they continue with this course of diplomatic bullying. But these are early days for the trade war. All we can do for now is wait and see what will happen in the next few weeks. So stay tuned because for sure I will give you more news and analysis about this US tariff crisis. Thanks for watching. See you soon.